Welcome to my video on RXJS Observables. Recall from my previous video about promises, there's a link in the description below, and I'll do a quick recap here. If you create a promise and inside of the callback we set a timeout to resolve that promise after 3 seconds, we can do myPromise.then console log and log out the resolved value here, and I'll make this an arrow function so we can resolve a value. And I'll just put in here toValue, so it resolves to the value of the string toValue. And if we run that, we'll see after 3 seconds it resolves to the string toValue, so it resolves to a value. If we do a console.log here before the timeout, a promise was kicked off, we'll see a promise was kicked off, the promise is running, and then that timeout runs after 3 seconds, which resolves the promise. If we comment out the .then, we see the promise runs even if no one is listening or waiting for results. An observable is different. So let's go ahead and import observable from RxJS. And we'll go ahead and do const my observable, or my stream actually, equals observable.create, which is just like creating a new promise, except it takes an observer. And that function is going to work similar to a promise, so we'll log out a stream was kicked off instead of a promise was kicked off, and instead of resolve, it's observer.next. It's very similar. So it's pushing values asynchronously with this next function, but unlike a promise, we can next multiple values in here, which we'll see momentarily. So if we run that, we see a promise was kicked off. We did not see the stream started because no one subscribed to the stream. So that's a key difference between streams and promises. Streams don't run until you subscribe. So once we subscribe, then we see a stream was kicked off. And we can go ahead and console.log, and after 3 seconds we see a value. Let's go ahead and get this promise stuff out of here so we can see that a little bit better. And we see a stream was kicked off, and then after 3,000 milliseconds logs out a value, which was called with observer.next, pushed a value, or nexted a value as we would say. So next we'll go ahead and break this out. So the subscribe actually takes 3 arguments, 3 callbacks: on next, on error, and on complete. So unlike a promise that either resolves or rejects, you can emit multiple values and then it can error out or it can complete. So here we see next value, the observable pushed next value, and we'll go ahead and break this out here, and we'll put an error callback. So on error, this one's going to run, and it's going to say the observable had an error of, and then the error. And then we can put our complete here, and complete does not take a value. It just runs and completes when you call observable.complete. So if we go ahead and run this here, we see a stream was kicked off, and after 3 seconds we see the observable pushed to next value and it ends. So to illustrate the difference between promises that only have one value and observable that has multiple values, we push value 1, 2, and 3 over time, and we see those next values come in over the stream over time. We can also call observer.error, which will terminate the stream at that point, and call our onError. So we see the observable had an error of an error. Now the last thing we'll look at is how an observable can complete. So an error terminates the stream, so does observable.complete. So we'll go down here and we'll say observer.complete, after which there can be no more values or errors. It terminates the stream and cleans up any resources. So we'll see a stream was kicked off and then the observable has completed. Because we didn't wrap that in a timeout, it completes right away. None of these timeouts ever, well, they fire, but the observer.next has no effect because the stream, once again, has completed or terminated. So if we wait for 3 seconds to observer.complete, it'll let the values through up to 3 seconds, and then it completes. So if we comment out this error here, it should complete. And then you see the observable has completed. If we put an error after one value before the other, we see we don't get the subsequent values. The observable errored out and no more values come in. Likewise with completing, if we complete, no more values will come in. Another thing we can do is operators. so we can actually map the values coming in. Here we'll go ahead and concatenate the word test onto the end of the string. And as of RxJS 6, you can't just dot map. You've actually got to use this thing they call pipeable operators. So we're going to go ahead and change that to pipe. And then we're going to import the operator map from RxJS/operators. And then down here we'll pipe to that map operator. What that's going to do is map the values to a new value, or transform the stream, transform the values coming in on that stream. So if we go ahead and run that, we see test here in the console. And to make this a little bit more clear, let's change these to numbers, so 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll map that number to the number times 2, so we'll double the numbers. And now in the console we can see it's counting by 2s, or doubling the number, so we'll remove this error here, and we see it's counting by 2s.